Thanks for joining us at Right On Replicas, where we're proud to bring you the best scale model kit reviews on the planet. This review covers the Auto Transport Trailer by Revell. It's a 125 scale kit, number 85-1509 in the current catalog. And this was a direct release, just a reissue with a new boxing of the transporter that's been seen over the years. It's a skill level 3 kit for advanced builders, and it contains 160 pieces, molded in gray with vinyl tires and tubing and a scale-sized metal chain. The instructions are well laid out, and they have a cutting diagram for the tubing, and the decals are given for the hazard stripes and a generic shipping company times. The trailers were painted to match the cab, and in our case the trailer has a kind of a two-tone scheme for it. Their matching colors were painted the same as the trailers, but for us, since we're not adding that feature, the frame is one color and ramps, and the second color is painted on the chassis parts. Now, when you're done with this kit, it'll be about almost 23.5 inches long, 6 3/4 inches wide, and over 5 inches high. And the trailers are they were pretty common sight on American highways back from the 30s onward, up until recent days when many of the vehicles are now shipped on rail. But there's some still short hauls that have to be done, and they're seen in many areas, and if you keep an eye out for them, you'll see the intricate hydraulics and ramps that are used to make this possible. Here are the decals for this kit. As you can see, they're colorful and the register is good. We've got the side markers, and we've got a generic sticker for the side of the transporter there. We've also got some new car stickers that you'd find in the windows of a new car if you should add some vehicles at 1/25th scale to your model. Now remember, we'll be using Model Master liquid cement, sometimes super glue for fragile parts, and some white glue for window style parts. And also remember to use the manufacturer's safety and use guidelines when you use any of the products that you see or hear mentioned in the review. Gather these pieces to start construction with the main chassis, and note there's a sticker on the bottom of origin, so you can remove that with a little alcohol or even lighter fluid or peel that off, and then clean off any flash from the parts and remove the sprue tabs from the pieces. Assemble each of the frame rails and add the cross members into place, and then add the center support. Now paint that as a unit the color that you chose for your frame, and the rear platforms are steel colored, and the lower middle ramp sections are steel as well. You should prime these parts with a good etching primer before you paint them. It would be nearly impossible to sand the diamond tread, and the parts that you need to use would be like a self-etching primer to make sure that the paint sticks. Now once the primer is dry, you can paint your frame and the ramps as you desire, and install the lower middle ramps and the rear platforms to the frame as shown here. Now we can add the side markers to the frame. There's 12 of them, number 8 decals, and they'll be installed on each side of the outside of the frame, equidistant from each other. And you probably won't need it, but if you get into the larger decal, you may want to use some aftermarket setting solutions to make sure that the decals stick well and conform to any contours that are underneath them. Now gather the parts that you see here, and we're going to paint all of these aluminum, and we'll be using a set of these to build the spare tires for the frame. So there's 2 spare tires that have a rim and a back ring, and install the rim and the back ring to either side of the tire, as the tires are non-directional and they have printing on both sides anyway. Make sure that you scrape off any of the paint or chrome that's on the pieces where you're going to mate them together to get a good joint possible with your glue. And use some liquid cement here and install the tires to each side of the trailer frame. Paint these a steel color. These are your fenders and ramps, and then once they're dry, install the rear frame covers and install the fenders. Then glue on the ramps from the fenders to the lower middle ramp. As a caution here, note that there are braces in between the fenders that should stay attached. The way they attach the sprue to them makes it look like they may be something that you would remove, but do not cut off the center braces. The front ramps are painted steel also, and when they are dried they'll be installed. So the ramps are added to the center plate with the kingpin, which is frame color. Install the center plate onto the frame and add the long ramps from the center plate to the lower middle ramp, and then add the front ramps into place too. Get these parts out to assemble the rear of the trailer. Then assemble the 4 hydraulic rams and paint them steel. And the rear panel and side panels are aluminum. Now on the rear and the side panels, all of the tail lights and marker lights are stoplight red. Now add decals 4, 6, and 7 in place on the rear panels, and decals 2 and 3 go on each of the square rams on the outer side. Now install a ram on each pin of the side panels, the rounded ones on the lower pin, and then mount the side panels in place on the rear panel. Get these parts ready to attach the rear ramps and the rear panel assembly to the frame. Assemble the rear brace and paint it frame color, and the ramps are steel colored. Now install the brace and then the rear panel onto it, and then add the ramps from the fenders to the brace. Paint the landing gear legs steel, and the gear housing is painted frame color. Now install the gear with the tab so that it slides freely in the housing, and assemble the housing halves. Now add the completed unit to the frame. Paint the 2 side structure units aluminum and let those dry. At the center of this picture you'll see there are 2 marker lights at the bottom of the structures there. And we're going to paint turn signal yellow, those marker lights at the very bottom there on the right corner. And then add decal number 8 to the bottom frame under the ladder on each side. Then install the sides in place onto the frame. Now we're going to gather up these parts, and the front structure can be assembled using the 2 sides and the front panel. And then add the side panels, sign panels to the sides, and paint this unit aluminum. Now we can add decals number 1 to each sign, and 3 of the decals number 8 to the bottom sides. Now paint the front markers turn signal yellow also, and then this completed unit is mounted on the frame and side structures of the trailer. Get these parts out of the kit, and the upper ramps can be assembled next. The ramps are steel colored, and the cross members and chain mounts are aluminum. The ramps are paired and are assembled in pairs. Now add the cross members in place and the chain mounts on the inside of the ramps. There are 5 cross members and 14 mounts. There is some scale size chain that's included and some thread used to create tie downs. So cut the chain into 14 equal lengths. Then wrap the chain around a chain mount and tie it with the thread, and place the chain on the ramp loosely. The chain is cut at roughly 1 5/8 inches each. These pieces are used to install the upper ramps at this time. Now there is 1 cross member to add in the frame for the C set of ramps, and on the D set of ramps add the hydraulic lock shafts. Now install the ramps in order A, B, C, and D from the front to back on the top frame. The cross members will have pins that will slide into place. Paint the rear hydraulic rams steel, and after they've dried, insert them into the hydraulic tubes in the rear of the vehicle. Attach each of the sides to the ramp and mount the lock bar in place while leaving the rams unglued to lift it up and lower the ramp. At this point I'm going to use these pieces and deviate from the order of assembly in the instructions for ease of construction. And the tires can be assembled now, and the rims were painted aluminum earlier, and insert a rear and front rim into a tire. Glue the inside ring of the rims to a separator ring, and then the tires are left loose to spin on the rim. So do all 4 sets and set those aside. Paint the brake units and the axles flat black, and set those aside to dry. Attach a brake unit to each location on the frame, and then insert an axle into each rim back. Now slide the axles into each hole in the leaf springs and line up the axles to attach them to each other. Now glue the axles together. Now note that I had left the tires loose on the rims, so now you can spin and align them on the rims so that they're straight and glue them into position properly. Get the control lever units out of the kit, and we're going to paint the knobs black and the rest of them aluminum. And once they have dried, we can install those into place on the frame, as you see here. We'll use these pieces to install the rear ramps, and they are steel, as are the steps and the pins. The instructions will tell you to use some of the chain to connect these pieces here, to connect the pin and the step, but I felt that it was just a little large for that application. So mount the steps and then slide the pin into the hole in the lock bar, and install the upper end rams to ramp D. And the bottom ramps are left loose, as they are used for driving the cars onto the trailer. And I use some craft wire here for the purposes of making that connection. Get these parts out and paint the kingpin and the frame covers frame color, and then install those on the front of the frame. Paint the hydraulic transfer boxes aluminum color, and then flip the frame over and install those onto the underside at the front and near the rear. This is the hydraulic hose template that's in the instruction sheet. So cut the hoses to length and install them into the locations that are indicated by the instructions. And all the dimensions are on the template too, if you wanted to use a ruler to make the cuts. You'll run into some significant issues trying to run the hydraulic lines. The first problem is that there are no pins on any of the rams in order to attach the hoses to. To solve this, I used some fine craft wire that fit tightly into the hose, which is the tubing, of course, that's supplied. And then I drilled a small hole in each ram on the trailer. So then you can trim the pin off at the hose and super glue a small piece of wire to create an attachment point there. So problem 2 is that the junction box pins are too big for the hose also. So I cut them off flush, drilled out the locations, and used some craft wire pins for those as well. Now I can easily run the hose hydraulics without any issues. So beginning with hose A, I'll cut out each one and attach them in order. Do one hose at a time so as not to get confused or misplace them. And once completed, all the hoses will be installed into place and you won't have any issues. To finish up construction, the final step is adding the accessory tools. I painted the wrenches silver, the tire tool steel color, and the gloves yellow, and the hammer brown and black. Now set all of the tools in the tray on the trailer floor. There were only a few parts left over from construction, and those were some excess hydraulic valves and some decals for the new car windows and a couple of side markers. Well, there you have it. Now this trailer has been around for a while and is still pretty popular. It's representative of the auto transporters that are still in use commonly. This vintage kit is still available at online auction sites and some of the larger online retailers and hobby shops everywhere. But what a great addition to your model collection, and in fact it will display 6 generally 125 scale cars as well as a 125 scale cab. Now the Peterbilt 359 or the Kenworth W900 models that Revell put out would pair well with this trailer. And at 2 feet in length, though, you'll have to be minded that this will take up quite a bit of shelf space. Now assembly is straightforward and the parts fit is pretty nice. There weren't really any warped or misfit parts, but there is some flash here and there that will have to be trimmed off. Now the biggest issue with assembly is excessive sprue joints that are pretty big, and they have to be trimmed and carefully repaired sometimes. Otherwise, the only issue is that you have to create your own pin mounting system to attach the hydraulic hoses. Now, quite frankly, that was a normal problem on many of the kits that came out back then, as most of the time it seemed that the pins were too fat for the tubing, or there weren't any pins provided for mounting. A simple fix can be had, and we showed you how to do that here. It's pretty nicely detailed for a kid of this age, and it would make a great contest entry, or even as the basis for a diorama. But overall, it went together very well, and everybody needs one of these. And you see here some of the kits that were added onto it just as a display. They're not, of course, included in the kit, but they really look nice when you put it all together. Well, we hope you like this premium scale model kit review, and so that you don't miss any more, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. But you can find us on Facebook and at our website, rightonreplicas.com. Thanks!